At 6 o'clock in the morning, a father walked out into the dark to check on his son and found only a red wagon. It was still loaded with bundles of that morning's Des Moines Sunday Register undelivered, sitting exactly where 12-year-old Johnny Gosch had left it, less than 5 blocks from his own front door. Johnny was gone. No struggle, no blood, no scream that any neighbor could later recall hearing, just a wagon full of newspapers nobody would ever finish delivering. 44 years later, Johnny Gosch has never been found. No one has ever been arrested. And his mother, now in her 80s, has spent more than 4 decades insisting she knows exactly what happened to him. A claim law enforcement has never been able to confirm, and has never definitively ruled out either. This is his story, and it is one of the strangest, most disputed missing child cases in American history. This is Unsolved and Unforgotten, a series built entirely from documented investigative record, police reports, court testimony, and verified reporting. Tonight's case sits at the origin point of the modern missing children's movement, alongside Etan Patz and Adam Walsh. Unlike those cases, this one has never produced a single arrest, and it comes with claims so extraordinary that, even now, serious journalists and investigators disagree about how much of it to believe. We'll present what is documented and be clear about what remains only alleged. John David Gosch was born on November the 12th, 1969, in Des Moines, Iowa. By 1982, he was 12 years old, living with his parents, John and Noreen Gosch, in West Des Moines, a quiet suburb of the state capital. Like thousands of American boys his age at the time, Johnny had a paper route, delivering the Des Moines Sunday Register to homes throughout his neighborhood before dawn each Sunday morning. Ordinarily, his father accompanied him on the route. It was a small, unremarkable family routine. A father and son out together in the pre-dawn quiet, before most of the neighborhood was even awake. On the morning of Sunday, September the 5th, 1982, for reasons that have never been treated as suspicious in themselves, Johnny set out on his route without his father alongside him. He would never be seen by anyone who has ever been definitively identified again. Johnny left his house before daybreak, pulling his red wagon loaded with papers to begin the familiar route he had run many times before. Investigators would later establish that he made it at least as far as the corner of 42nd Street and Marquardt Lane, where multiple witnesses recalled seeing him at the neighborhood paper drop point, picking up his bundle for the morning's deliveries. That was the last confirmed sighting of Johnny Gosch by anyone whose identity has ever been established. When Johnny failed to return home at his expected time, his father went out looking for him along the route. He found Johnny's red wagon abandoned, still loaded with undelivered newspaper bundles, less than 5 blocks from their home. There was no sign of Johnny himself. Police and community volunteers mobilized quickly to search the surrounding neighborhood. Nothing was found. Several witnesses came forward in the following days, describing having seen Johnny that morning, speaking with a man near a parked car, an account consistent with someone asking a child for directions, a common and often overlooked precursor to abduction. No composite sketch from these accounts ever produced an identified suspect. No vehicle described by witnesses was ever definitively tied to anyone charged in connection with the case, because no one has ever been charged. Johnny Gosch's disappearance arrived at a pivotal moment in the nation's awareness of child abduction. 3 years earlier, in 1979, 6-year-old Etan Patz had vanished on his way to a school bus stop in New York City. In 1981, 6-year-old Adam Walsh was abducted from a shopping mall in Hollywood, Florida, and later found murdered, a case that would go on to inspire major federal legislation and a long-running television program dedicated to fugitives and missing persons. That same year, 11-year-old Kathy Combe was abducted, raped, and murdered in Santa Claus, Indiana. Johnny's case, arriving in the midst of this string of high-profile abductions, helped cement a shift already underway in how American parents and law enforcement approach the safety of children. Johnny's photograph became one of the first missing child images printed on milk cartons nationwide, part of a campaign that would define an entire era of American parenting anxiety. West Des Moines and Iowa more broadly found itself thrust into a national spotlight it had never sought. The case files generated by the Gosch investigation are, according to reporting on the case, extensive, reportedly filling 7 full drawers at the West Des Moines Police Department, a testament to the sheer volume of tips, leads, and theories the case has generated across more than 4 decades. Less than 2 years later, on August the 12th, 1984, a second Des Moines area paperboy. 13-year-old Eugene Mart disappeared under circumstances investigators and journalists have long described as strikingly similar to Johnny's case. Like Johnny, Eugene vanished while delivering newspapers in the early morning hours. Like Johnny, he was never found. The similarities between the two cases were impossible for investigators to ignore, and impossible, ultimately, to prove meant anything. Police have never established a confirmed connection between the two disappearances. The cumulative effect of these disappearances on the newspaper delivery industry itself was significant. In the years following Johnny's and Eugene's cases, many newspapers across the country began shifting away from young children as delivery carriers, moving instead toward adult carriers, a quiet but lasting structural change in how American newspapers reached their subscribers, driven in part by parents' fear that what happened in Des Moines could happen anywhere. For more than 2 decades, the Gosch case followed a path familiar to many long unsolved disappearances, periods of official quiet, punctuated by claims, tips, and theories that rarely amounted to confirmed evidence. Then, in August of 2006, the case took a turn that returned it to national headlines. Johnny Gosch reported that she had found an envelope of photographs left at her doorstep. Some depicted a boy, bound and gagged, in what appeared to be a captivity setting. Noreen has stated publicly, and has continued to maintain in interviews, given as recently as the 2023 CNN retrospective on the case, that she believes one of the boys pictured is her son. Investigators have not confirmed this claim. According to reporting from that period, a retired Florida sheriff's investigator named Nelson Zalva stated that he recognized the photographs, or photographs strikingly similar to them, from an entirely separate investigation he had conducted in Florida in the late 1970s, years before Johnny Gosch ever disappeared. According to Zalva's account, he had identified the children in at least some of those photographs during his original investigation, and none were Johnny Gosch. Of the boys depicted, Zalva said, only 3 were ever positively identified by law enforcement, and the one Noreen believes to be her son was reportedly never among them. Johnny Gosch has continued to dispute this conclusion. The unresolved contradiction between her belief and the retired investigator's account remains, to this day, one of the case's many unresolved threads. No aspect of the Johnny Gosch case has generated more controversy, more media attention, or more disagreement among those who have studied it than its alleged connection to a Nebraska scandal known as the Franklin Community Credit Union case. In 1989, a young man named Paul A. Bonacci came forward with allegations against Lawrence E. King Jr., a businessman and Republican Party activist who served as director of the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska. Bonacci accused King of running an underage prostitution ring and of victimizing him personally beginning at a young age. As part of these allegations, Bonacci also claimed direct personal involvement in Johnny Gosch's abduction, stating that he had used chloroform to subdue Johnny inside a getaway vehicle as part of the same trafficking operation he accused King of running. It is important to state clearly what the documented record actually supports here, separate from what has been alleged. Bonacci later brought a civil lawsuit against Lawrence King. King did not mount a defense, and a federal judge entered a default judgment against him, awarding Bonacci $1 million. Though the judge's ruling in that specific civil proceeding centered on Bonacci's own claims of victimization, not on an independent legal finding that Bonacci's account of Johnny Gosch's abduction was true. King briefly attempted to appeal that judgment shortly before his release from prison in 2001 on unrelated charges, then dropped the appeal. A private investigator named Gary Caradori had been retained to look into the broader Franklin-related allegations of child sexual abuse. Caradori died in a plane crash while that investigation was ongoing, a death that has fueled extensive speculation among those who believe the Franklin allegations point toward a genuine, deliberately concealed conspiracy, though no official investigation has ever established that his death was anything other than an accident. West Des Moines Police Lieutenant Cameron Koppes addressed the Bonacci and Franklin allegations directly in an interview given years later, stating plainly that his department had no evidence to suggest Johnny had been swept into a pedophile ring, while also acknowledging that the theory was not, in his words, impossible, simply one that investigators had never been able to support through documented facts. Koppes further stated that, although multiple names had been put forward to investigators over the years as possible suspects, No single piece of evidence had ever tied any of those individuals to Johnny's disappearance. This distinction matters. The Franklin allegations are real, documented allegations that were the subject of genuine legal proceedings involving Lawrence King. Whether they connect to Johnny Gosch's disappearance specifically has never been established by law enforcement and remains, on the available public record, an unproven claim resting substantially on Paul Bonacci's own testimony. The most extraordinary claim in the entire case came from Noreen Gosch herself and centers on a single night in March of 1997, nearly 15 years after Johnny disappeared. According to Noreen's account, given under oath at a later court hearing connected to Bonacci's case, in a police interview, and detailed extensively in her own book, Why Johnny Can't Come Home, she was awakened at approximately 2:30 in the morning by knocking at the door of her apartment. She looked through the peephole and saw two men standing in the hallway. One, she believed, resembled her son, then 27 years old. Noreen has stated that she let the two men inside and that the visitor she believed to be Johnny opened his shirt to show her a birthmark she recognized. According to her account, the two of them talked for roughly an hour to an hour and a half. The man she believed to be Johnny reportedly told her that he had been the victim of a pedophile organization, that he had eventually escaped, and that he had chosen to remain in hiding rather than come forward publicly, out of fear for his safety and the safety of others. She has said that throughout the conversation, he would look toward the second, unidentified man, seemingly for approval before speaking. She did not learn where either man was living or where they went afterward. Noreen did not disclose this alleged visit publicly at the time. According to reporting on the case, she first revealed it 2 years later, in testimony given to a grand jury. John Gosch, Johnny's father, who divorced Noreen in 1993, has stated publicly that he is not certain the visit occurred at all. Investigators and researchers who have examined the claim over the years have offered competing explanations. Some have proposed that if a visit did occur, the visitor may have been someone impersonating Johnny rather than Johnny himself. No physical evidence, no fingerprint, no DNA sample, no photograph taken during the alleged visit exists to confirm the identity of either man who Noreen says stood in her doorway that night. In the years following the alleged 1997 visit, a separate and even more speculative theory emerged, online and in independent research circles, proposing that Johnny Gosch, now living under a changed identity and appearance, might be connected to an entirely unrelated public figure years later. Proponents of this theory have pointed to claims some attributed to Paul Bonacci, some to author John DeCamp, who wrote extensively about the Franklin allegations, suggesting that Johnny had altered his appearance in ways they believe are consistent with that later public figure's altered look. This theory has never been substantiated by any official investigation, any forensic comparison, or any confirmed source independent of Bonacci's own claims. It remains, by any reasonable journalistic standard, unproven speculation, but it illustrates just how far the Gosch case has traveled from a straightforward missing child investigation into one of the most heavily mythologized unsolved cases in American true crime. It is worth stepping back, amid the competing claims that have accumulated around this case for more than 4 decades, to state plainly what law enforcement has and has not confirmed. Police have confirmed that Johnny Gosch disappeared from his paper route in the early morning hours of September 5, 1982. That his wagon was found abandoned, still loaded with undelivered papers, a short distance from his home. That witnesses reported seeing him speak with an unidentified man near a car shortly before he vanished, and that, despite an investigation spanning more than 4 decades and generating an extraordinarily large case file, no arrest has ever been made, and no suspect has ever been definitively tied to his disappearance through physical evidence. Police have not confirmed that Johnny was taken as part of an organized trafficking ring connected to the Franklin Community Credit Union scandal, that the photographs left at Noreen Gosch's doorstep in 2006 depict Johnny, or that the man who allegedly visited Noreen Gosch's apartment in March of 1997 was in fact her son. This is not a case where investigators dismiss the family's claims out of hand. West Des Moines police have acknowledged, on the record, that the trafficking theory is not impossible. It is a case where more than 4 decades of extraordinary claims have never crossed the threshold from allegation into documented evidentiary fact. As of 2026, no arrests have ever been made in the disappearance of Johnny Gosch. The case remains formally classified as a cold case, but it has never been closed. It continues to be jointly investigated by the FBI's Des Moines Field Office and the West Des Moines Police Department, with a case listing still maintained through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs. A familial DNA sample has been submitted and testing has been completed, though no match confirming Johnny's location or fate has ever been publicly announced. Johnny Gosch, now in her 80s, has continued to advocate for her son's case for more than 4 decades, including in an extensive on-camera interview conducted for a 2023 retrospective on the case, in which she revisited the West Des Moines cul-de-sac where Johnny disappeared and reflected on how much the neighborhood and her own life had changed in the years since. Johnny Gosch, Johnny's father, has taken a notably different public posture than Noreen over the years, expressing skepticism about several of the more extraordinary claims associated with the case, including the alleged 1997 visit. If he is alive today, Johnny Gosch would be 56 years old. Johnny Gosch left his home before sunrise on a Sunday morning in September of 1982 to do a job he had done many times before, and he did not come home. 44 years later, his case remains one of the most contested and unresolved missing child investigations in the country, not for lack of theories, but for a persistent and painful lack of proof. Somewhere between a father finding an empty red wagon on a quiet street and a mother's unwavering conviction that her son once stood in her doorway as a grown man, this case has never found solid ground. What remains constant, documented, and beyond dispute is simply this: a 12-year-old boy went out to deliver newspapers, and he never returned. If this episode helped you understand the layers of this case, what's documented, and what remains only alleged, please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Unsolved and Unforgotten for our next case. Anyone with information related to Johnny Gosch's disappearance is asked to contact the FBI's Des Moines Field Office or the West Des Moines Police Department. He is missing. He is not forgotten.